Phil Spencer's recent comment about no longer being interested in trying to pull gamers away from other platforms and into the Xbox ecosystem seems like the most clear-cut admission that the company is turning its back on Xbox hardware. In the near future, where Sony's most direct competitor for the past quarter century is out of the picture, where do you see their primary competition coming from? Would it simply be from competing for time with alternative gaming spheres like Nintendo's handheld or the PC ecosystem? Or could their primary competition in the future come from the emergence of PC/console hybrids like a living room Steam Deck or a Windows-based living room device from Microsoft itself? My sort of quick reaction to that is basically what you said at the end. Microsoft is talking about the next Xbox. There is going to be more than one next generation Xbox. Phil Spencer's also talking about differentiation. And ultimately, I think it is the case that all paths lead to PC. So the concept of having an Xbox that would also enable you to play games from any PC store, I actually think is a very compelling alternative to the PlayStation.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, that's my view on it. In terms of where that takes PlayStation as a piece of hardware, the concept of competition is an interesting one because whenever I've discussed consoles with Mark Cerny, he has no interest at all in what anybody else is doing. He's razor focused on producing the best hardware he possibly can within a set budget. And I don't see that mission changing at all. I don't know what you think, Alex.
I mean, no, I wouldn't see that changing necessarily from Mark Cerny's perspective. I'm just curious about the advance of time and the market, taking people away out, because I think maybe the console experience is something that is generationally defined, like the set-top box that you sit down. Switch is different because young children are focused on that in a very different way than the other boxes maybe. But I feel like maybe that generation is actually attached to a generation of people who grew up that way. That was like the socialization thing. And so as people that get older that were attached to these things that you sit down on a desk or underneath the TV, and you want to still maintain that market, like you have to find a new way to actually sell products to people. And if those people are becoming fewer and fewer, not because they're dying, but because they just have time competition and they grow up and all these things, well, then you have to find new ways to do that. And I think that means expanding beyond the console market, the traditional console market. And I think that's maybe the future here that Phil Spencer's talked about before, and maybe that they've realized is happening, that if they can't take someone's away out of the PlayStation ecosystem anymore, they have to get a new way to get new revenue. And that means expanding into a different market entirely. I don't think it means the end of Xbox hardware, though. I think Xbox hardware will sit alongside this strategy much in the way, not with Sega, but like you can imagine a future where someone sells their own box, but at the same time it's available on other things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
John?
That's how I feel about it.
Not really too much to add to that per se. Just that I like this comment about like who is their competition. Well, obviously Nintendo is their competition. But I also wondered about China. What if they got into the console market at some point? They've been kind of up and coming, but like maybe not in the traditional way, not in the way that we know, but in a different way. I've always wondered like what that might look like and if they might try it. Because like Microsoft kind of leaves the door open a little bit here, but I feel like it would require a pretty smart, unique approach to what the console is for this to work. I think the traditional model we've known for so long probably isn't viable for a new company to just dive into. I think it would need a shakeup. So curious to see if something like that ever happens there. I don't know.
Interesting. From the Nintendo perspective, I think they're in a really interesting position. I think obviously they do have a contingent that is in the sort of lower age bracket, but it's also had a huge amount of secondary purchases. People that have a PlayStation or an Xbox have bought a Switch simply because the concept of the machine being able to game anywhere has it's uniquely compelling, which is why PlayStation and Xbox, of course, of producing their own handhelds. But I also think that when you get older, your ability to sit in a fixed place and play games is quite difficult. And that's a problem that the Switch solves rather well. So in a sense, I think that PlayStation and Nintendo are to a certain extent complementary, but there is certainly a competition for time, which again I think is what the question asker was talking about there. I don't know how this is all going to play out, but I do think obviously we're going to be looking at a completely different type of Xbox in terms of its functionality, in terms of its utility and position in the PC space. PlayStation, I think they're just going to do the very best they can to make a really great PlayStation. I think they're going to do a great job. Switch 2, we kind of know what's happening there. And again, hugely exciting stuff.